Bonjour, hi, and welcome back to another episode of Matthew's Always Wrong. And today, I wanted to get into a little bit of the news that we weren't able to go over yesterday or last episode. And really just trying to hit home a little bit more on the entire immigration issue. So previously, if you haven't watched it, I would recommend watching the last episode, but we had a few technical difficulties, so we weren't able to talk about everything we wanted to talk about. We went over a lot about, the immigration numbers, about a few stories on crime and a few stories about how people are trying to scam the system. So I wanted to start off today going a little bit more into talking about how easy it is for these foreign nationals to come into Canada on visas based off of false information to the government. Now, what am I talking about? Well, I alluded to this last time, speaking about how there's a certain schools in Ontario and all the provinces where they kind of operate as fake schools to just bring in these people, to bring in these immigrants, these foreign temporaries. And how does that work? Well, how it operates is essentially a mill. It's a visa mill, basically. It's these fake schools, they promise, and the media keeps telling everyone, they're going, oh, it's these schools that are just lying to all these immigrants. No, that's not what's happening. This is an intentionally led set of organizations, schools, that all cooperate to bring in as many people as possible. Why? Because they get funding, they get a lot of money, they get money from the government. So they're incentivized to try and bring in as many temporary visa holders as possible, temporary student visa holders as possible. And what's been able to happen is you have these fake schools that tell these, they tell these migrants, they go, look, we got housing for you, we'll have free food, we'll have all these classes for you. Then when they come here, they get the visa, they come here, oh, sorry, we don't have any of this stuff. And basically, it's just, you bring in a bunch of uneducated people, because that's how they game the system. If you really wanted to just legally immigrate to Canada, you have to have at least a certain set of skills. You have to maybe be a high school, college graduate. You have to be able to speak the language. But for these other visas, it's a lot easier to come in when you're completely uneducated, when you have no money, etc., etc. So what happens is you've got all these uneducated younger people. Well, ideally it'd be younger people, except for the fact that it's not always. A lot of these people are like grown men who are coming from India, going to these fake schools. These schools don't have classes. They're like right next to the immigration offices. And basically they just operate. Once you're in, you're basically in. Canada's immigration system isn't really built to deport these people. And that's a major issue. An issue that both political candidates don't really talk about. Oh, we'll cap the student visas. We'll adjust it. These are all synonyms for, we're going to keep bringing these people in. We're going to replace the white people. We're going to replace the native population. And we're going to essentially destroy Canada. There's been always this talk about how Canada isn't really a country. Canada, there's this underlying ideology that a lot of the people in Ottawa think, where it goes, Canada isn't really a real country. It's basically just a set of independent provinces who all kind of work together, who all kind of form a country, but there's no real union. So that's why you've seen the government encroach upon all the provinces' rights by, allocated federal funding to each province in order to get these federally mandated policies to go through, like healthcare, like $10 a day childcare. The only way that all the provinces would agree to these infringements on their rights is if the federal government goes, look guys, we'll just pay you a bunch of money. Healthcare transfers are billions and billions of dollars for each of the provinces. And yet it still doesn't work. That's an issue for another time. But by having this idea that Canada isn't a nation, we're just a set of independent provinces, fundamentally it's wrong. Canada is a very strong union. It has a very strong country. Except for the fact that they're actively trying to destroy it. They go, look, we have to increase the population. We have to bring in more people so that we don't get invaded by America, so that we don't get attacked by these globalists. But fundamentally what's happening is that by bringing in all these immigrants who don't share the culture, who don't share our values, who aren't Christian, who aren't white, it becomes an issue, especially in terms of dividing the country. You want to break up the country? It's like death by 1,000 cuts. Keep bringing in people, slowly separate them out. Oh, these people aren't Canada One. These people don't have their allegiances to the new host country. So that's what they're doing. They're trying to essentially sow the destruction of this nation by bringing in hundreds of thousands, millions of these immigrants. And again, not all of them are bad, but a lot of them don't share the values and would not work in assimilating into Canadian culture. I find it truly appalling, this notion that all these immigrants could come here, and through the Multiculturalism Act and through federal policies, these leftist policies, where all these people come in, they come in from India, they come in from Sri Lanka, China, whatever it may be. But because of these acts, they don't have to integrate. They can just go, and that's the reason why they're all going to Toronto and Vancouver. Most immigrants end up going to the major cities because that's where all the other people are already. So they already have this sense of community. And instead of creating a sense of community with the local Canadian population, or creating a sense of community by moving into a place and fully integrating into Canadian society, rather, they're allowed to just be isolated, to create their small community of people who aren't Canada One. They're India One, they're China One, they're Sri Lanka One. And what we've been told is that, look, it's a necessary evil. Look, we have to let them come in. We have to respect their culture because of the multiculturalism. Oh, but they don't have to respect our culture. Why is it that you have the Prime Minister, you have Justin Trudeau, you have Pierre Poilievre, you have the NDP, whatever, Jagmeet Singh. You have all these people pandering to all these specific immigrant groups by, adding in their local cultures. And that's not to say, sure, you can have some rub-off, you can add a little spice to Canadian culture. But this idea that Canada doesn't have a culture is completely wrong. We have a very strong, rich culture. And the issue is you have all these Canadians who are basically asleep. We're so nice that, the government can keep pushing and pushing and pushing. The reason why in America it's so much harder to get all these things done is because you have all these patriots who truly care about their country and don't actually want to change it. In Canada, this patriotism is a lot less strong because we keep getting fed this idea that Canada is barely real. It's a barely real place with non-existent culture, non-existent values. That's just wrong. That's just, again, the media lying to you. So you have all these immigrants, they come here, they don't respect the culture. They don't care. They don't want to switch. They don't want to integrate. They don't want to assimilate. Assimilation has been made this grand enemy of the people, these woke people, going, no, we can't have them. Assimilation is the worst. Assimilation is colonization. Only problem is, you're coming here, right? So you should be respecting our values. No, is that unfair to say? Is that immoral to say that I want people coming here to respect my values? To respect my country's ideologies, my country's culture, and my country's history? If I were to go, if I was a woman going to Saudi Arabia They have to respect that culture. They have to wear, you go to the Middle East, you have to wear the burqa, you have to wear the hijab. But when they come here, oh, it's fine. Do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. And then over time, and this is what you're seeing in Europe, Europe's cooked, by the way. Europe's done. Europe is lost, especially when looking at England. Britain is lost. And you're seeing all these protesters in Ireland protesting against the mass migration there. And then what happens? Anytime there's a slightly right-wing protest or movement going on, the police crack down immediately. You see that all over Europe, where in England, you have all these pro-Palestine people, and the government's just like, you know what? Chill, do whatever you want. But in the second you have a bunch of patriots holding the British flag, then they gotta crack down. In Canada, the trucker protest. These are right-wing, neo-Nazis. Not everyone on the right wing's a neo-Nazi. I'll tell you that much. I don't know, it seems odd to me that every time a right-wing person opens their mouth, they're immediately labeled a white nationalist. Maybe they should just accept it. You know what? Maybe we should move towards white nationalism. Because I've scoured the world, and I've looked at the world, and what I've found is that there are almost always three things that makes a great country. That makes a developed first world country an economic power, an economic, that makes that country supreme. It's a developed nation, and the difference between developed and non-developed nations. And what are those three things? Capitalism. Communism doesn't work. It's never worked and will not work. At my college campus, all I see are these join the communist revolution posters everywhere. The problem is these people, they look at the system and they've been taught. They keep getting fed this information by the media going, you're the problem, the system's the problem, the system's racist, it's inherently racist, it oppresses minorities, it's based off of colonialism, and overall it's detrimental to everyone. We need more equality. So, what's the option? Oh, let's go to communism. Ignore all the facts that communism has never worked. Ignore all the facts that, China is a totalitarian regime that's oppressive to every one of its citizens and has mass censorship and mass surveillance. Something they definitely want to bring here. So you have all these people who are now against, the capitalist regime, which has brought them the most, economic benefits, the most benefits out of any ideology that has ever existed. You're complaining about how we need communism while going to a school that was founded off of capitalist ideals, off of, you're tweeting off your iPhone. All your clothes are based off of capitalism. So it doesn't really make sense. But that's one of the things that are needed to have a developed nation. The second thing I found was, it's got to be a democracy. Even the shell of democracy that we have in Canada or in America, everyone goes, the democracies aren't real, especially in America. They're so divided. Well, it's not real because the leftists stole the election, right? They didn't like the guy, so they stole the election. And I've got a bunch of stories here about, Justin Trudeau too. He did some election interfering, but as politicians do. But fundamentally, democracy is needed. If you have this totalitarian regime, if you have, these leaders, these dictators, who control the country that they're in, who are they better? Are they, for that country? No, they're for themselves. They're corrupted by this power. They have unlimited power, so they say, I can do whatever I want. I'm going to drive the Rolls Royce. All of you are going to be poor. And none of you are going to complain about it because I'm going to bring out the military. And then finally, the third variable that's needed to create one of the best developed nations on the planet, and this is going to be the most controversial one, because the other two, that's kind of a given. It's kind of a given, right? Who cares, right? Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Democracy, capitalism, yeah. You got to have white people. Majority white nations have been the ones who have developed the quickest, who have given the most for their citizens, and who have overall been the most hospitable to the entire world. And that's controversial. You name me one country that's better off that doesn't have those three things. And then people will go, South Korea. Or they'll go, that's basically the only example people can think of. They go, South Korea. You know? Because all of Africa's cooked. You know, they're trying to kill all the white farmers in South Africa. And then they're like pleading with them to come back. After they murder all the Boers, they're like pleading, please come back, we need your tax dollars. But yeah, South Korea, the only reason why they're successful is they have basically those two first things. And then it was because of America, a white nationalist nation, that literally had to fight a war to keep them intact, to save them, because otherwise they would have been under communist rule. And that's the only reason why they're successful, is because of strong trading partnerships with white nations. Because white nations got involved, fixed the country, that they've been able to prosper. China's not really an economic power because the average person does not live as well as a Canadian, as well as a French, an American. You know, Europeans overall live much better. And you go, oh, what about the Eastern blocs? Again, look at number two. Number one, they're communist. They were communist, and that led to large amounts of periods of their history being essentially stagnated or in decline. So those are the three things that are needed. But what these globalists want, and what the people who are actually running these World Economic Forums and the United Nations, and who's running these countries with these leftist ideologies, are going, no, diversity is our strength. Diversity is not our strength. If diversity was our strength, why are they always coming to white countries? If we're so evil, why are they all coming here? And if they're so good for our population, for our country, why are their countries all shit? Why is it that we need to bring in every Indian, but the Indians can't fix their own country? Oh, but India's developing super well. Yeah, people are shitting on the streets. People are, have you seen those street food videos on TikTok? It's not good over there. All right, we'll say that. So, immigration is not our strength. This was just an idea that was made up in the 1900s to essentially sow the destruction of our countries. Why? Because they hate white people. They hate the whites. They want us white people to be destroyed. We're the villains. We're the ones that have propagated so much crime. We've destroyed the world. That's not to say that, but sometimes you gotta take some accountability. Sometimes you gotta look at yourself and go, well, every single African nation can't seem to get their shit together. Oh, but that's just colonialism. Oh yeah? What about Ethiopia? What about all the places that weren't colonized? Ethiopia was never, they celebrate because they're like, they were never colonized, and yet it's still a garbage place. It's still awful. I would not want to go to Ethiopia. I don't think anybody wants to go to Ethiopia. So, and then you look at Europe now. Europe's taken what we're seeing right now to the extreme. Europe is cooked. And why do I say Europe is cooked? Is because you look at all these countries and they're being flooded with these migrants, these Muslim, North African, Middle Eastern migrants, and they're being flooded, and it's truly destroying the culture. There are no more French people in France. If you go to southern France, there's no more French people there. They're all black, they're all brown. Well, they deserve it because they're the colonial powers. Again, who's the countries that have provided the most economic benefit, who provide the highest level of, standard of living for its people? Oh, but look at Japan. Japan's so good. Japanese culture is one of the most homogenous cultures in the world. Just now that they've started taking in immigrants, has there been more crime? Has everything, we could learn a lot. And that might be the only exception to the white rule, the 3 rules that I came up with. That might be truly the only exception. And again, it's because they have strong diplomatic ties with America. They make ties with all the European nations. And they're not a totalitarian regime. So the Japanese culture is a very strong one. But even Japan, they're having birth rate crises. They have the most debt to GDP ratio as any other country. They've had a stagnant economy for the past 50 years, or 30 years, whatever it may be. And their population shrinking. Oh, but that's coming to, that's coming to Canada, that's coming to all the Western nations, because look at their birth rates. So we have to replace the people. That's what I want to get into the next point, that we have to bring in all the immigrants because of our declining birth rates. Once an immigrant comes here, first generation immigrant comes here, and they have kids, sure, they have a higher birth rate than the average Canadian or the average American. But then by the time you get to the second generation immigrants, so the kids, and by the time they have kids, they're smack dab on average in terms of birth rates, or even lower. If you look at Hispanics in America, the first generation, their birth rate is slightly above the average. But then by the time you get to the second generation, their birth rate's already lower than the average. So this is just a single, they want to go, let's just replace these people. Let's replace these white people with all these migrants because we have to keep growing. We have to get the population up so we can support all the boomers that are dying. The exact same issue is going to be happening in 50 years when you realize the same people you brought in, their kids aren't having kids. They're having less kids than us. Why? Because, a lot of them are less well off economically. They're less educated generally, but that's just a myth that they're telling you that we're going to fix all our immigration issues with all these immigrants, even though the birth rates are declining anyways. What really needs to happen is that we need to bring back religion into Canadian society. Canadian society has gone so secular, this push to move so far away from the church, essentially demonize the Christian church, Christianity as a whole, with all the residential schools. Yeah, it was bad, but look, you can't demonize the entire institution. And even as they're demonizing Christianity, Islam's growing, all the other religions are growing massively, and the government doesn't seem so keen on cracking down on, Muslims and compared to Christians. So what happens? Well, when you see the decline in birth rates, it's almost directly associated with the decline in religion and a multitude of other factors, including abortions, the access to contraceptives, etc. And those I'll get into another time, but, and they really hate Christians. That's the issue. Not only have we lost all the Christian values which created the sense of community, it's created the sense of purpose in life, and it created this idea that you have a duty to fulfill to God. You've destroyed all of that. You've brought back this nihilistic sense of individualism that goes, no, I'm going to care about me. All I care about is me. So then you have all these people in isolation. Nobody's making friends. There's an epidemic of loneliness. Apparently this is the new thing. It's an epidemic where people aren't talking to each other. So you got the decline of religious values, especially the Christian values. You've got a secularized nation based off of disassociating itself with its historic roots and its Christian roots and its culture. Canada is fundamentally a Christian country, just like America is. The difference between Canada and America is that Canada was actually based off of two different Christian ideologies, the Catholic French, the Catholic Métis people, the Métis, which are the indigenous people who mixed with the French settlers. And you also have the Protestant English Anglophones. So it's this separation that allowed Christianity to be completely expansive over Canada. But again, with these liberal policies, the Liberals have been in power forever in Canada. The majority of time when a prime minister is in power, it's due to these progressive policies. It's due to these liberal ideologies, compared to America, which is a lot more, it's a lot more equal between traditionalism, progressivism, with the right and the left. So you have this decline in birth rates, and then their solution is to just wipe out the white people. They want to get rid of you. They truly hate you. And I just wanted to talk a little bit more about truly the scale of immigration in Canada. Right now, 5% of our population comes in every year as immigrants. That's essentially a new Quebec City every 2 years. That's a new Toronto every 10 years. And that doesn't sound like, 5%, that's not that much, right? If America brought in the same amount of immigrants on a per capita basis as a percentage of population, America would be bringing 16.7 million immigrants every single year. Does that put it into scale for you? Does that put it into perspective a little bit more? We're taking in a lot of people, and it's causing a lot of issues because you can't integrate that many people. You need to slow it down. Normally what happened throughout history is you'd have these periods of high immigration, then low immigration. But the problem with it was that these immigrants were also the same people who lived here already. There were the British, there were the French, there were Europeans, the Eastern and Western Europeans who came here. They settled, they created families, they created communities, they created culture. They created essentially an off branch of European culture in Canadian society. And now what they're doing is they're trying to bring in all these other cultures, trying to destroy the Canadian identity so that people feel even more lost, feel even more powerless. What they do is they're attacking white people by every prong necessary. They destroyed religion, so you have less sense of a purpose. They've destroyed the institution of marriage. So you have, again, less sense of purpose, less sense of community. They bring in all these immigrants, tell you to respect their culture, even though not to respect your culture, your history, to demoralize you. And then they blatantly gaslight you about how these people are so much better. And then when you try to go for jobs, you don't get hired. They replace you. And then when you see all your wages stagnating and economic productivity stagnating in Canada compared to every other G7 nation, especially America, you start to wonder, hey, why are all these things happening in Canada? Because you bring in hundreds of thousands of unskilled workers who essentially don't allow for job raises because the second you ask for a raise, they kick you out and they replace you. This is just a different form of automation. That's all it is. Have you gone to a fast food place in Canada and seen a white person lately? I work at Tim Hortons. I'm the only white person who's there. I am the only white employee at Tim Hortons. Think about that. Tim Hortons is supposed to be this quintessential Canadian corporation, even though it's owned by an American conglomerate. Now, it's not even Canada One anymore. But this quintessential beacon of Canadianism, it's not owned by Canadians. It's not even run by Canadians anymore. So it's all a ploy to demoralize you, to make you feel weak, emasculated. They take away, they introduce all these genders, all this fake ideologies to convince you that your masculinity is toxic, to tell you that no, you don't need to be a strong man. You don't need to take responsibility. Just go smoke weed and play video games. Because then you're weak, and then they can keep pushing you. And what they do is they slowly push you. They inch you forward and forward. They up immigration just a little bit. And then once they spike it, you're not going to say anything because you're so used to it already. You're so complacent in the system. And that's why we need to bring back Canadian patriotism. We need to bring back Canadian ideals. We need to bring back people who are Canada One. First and foremost, only that. Canada One. I don't care where you come from. If you're still India One, I don't want you here. That's just it. That's all it is. And then we keep talking about all these economic immigrants, right? We bring them here because they're high skilled. They're here to fill up all the vacant jobs, which we talked about last time, and that's not really the case. Also, in addition to that, the people who are coming here for economic reasons, because they're skilled, a lot of them don't even go to the jobs they're supposed to be filling. That's a major issue. The Canadian government loves to talk about how, there's all these vacancies and that all these immigrants are coming here to fix those vacancies. But the problem is, a lot of them aren't going to the jobs that they need to be going to. They're not going to, you come in with a degree in whatever it might be, computer sciences. And then what do? Do you go to computer sciences? No. That is partly on the fault of the Canadian immigration system and the government. And this is one of the points Pierre Poilievre made, even though, look, I'm a better fan of Poilievre than Trudeau, but, that's a point he's been raising, is that, look, we have to change the immigration system so that the people who actually come here for those economic reasons should be placed and should be directed to the actual places where they're needed. Not so that they can just proliferate randomly in Canadian society so that they can get a random job anywhere. And then ultimately lower the productivity. And then that's another thing I want to talk about, the economic benefits of immigrants versus, natives in terms of tax dollars. So what happens is there's a life cycle for people. When you're young, you're burdened on the taxpayer, right? Because you're going through this education, you're not working, you're not paying taxes. Then once you get a job and you progress in your career, you give back a bunch of that money and much more to the government in terms of taxes, in terms of economic benefits. So you are a net add to the government. Then when you start to get around 60, 65, 70, your economic output has peaked well into your 40s. Once you get to your 40s, your economic output roughly peaks, 40s, 50s. Then you start to go into retirement. You start taking out your pension, which you were paying into that whole time. You become more of an economic burden again. So the life cycle goes burden, 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 add, and you're adding for a good 50 years of your life. And then you're becoming a burden again. That's generally what happens with, normal citizens. But then the issue with the migrants is that they don't add ever. They never add to it. So on average, this is a study out of Denmark from 2018, and it shows that when you're people with Danish origin, so Danish citizens, they provide a net benefit. They provide that benefit when they're working, and then they take back that money when they retire. However, and then you look at other Western immigrants, so other immigrants from European white countries, they do essentially the same thing. They're the exact same. They're burdened when they're young, then they add, then they're burdened when they're old. But then you look at the Middle Eastern, North African immigrants, so the people who are there from North Africa, from Algeria, from Syria, all these other places, from Afghanistan. Do you think they provide a net benefit to the economic system? Nope. There is never on average, there is never a point in which those types of immigrants provide a net benefit to public finances in Denmark. Not a single point. Even at their max economic potential, roughly 45, 50, there's still a net drag on finances. And why is that? And that's why we're paying so much for all these immigrants. It's a hidden cost. Why deficits continue to run up. Why is that? Well, look, they're on welfare. You need a lot more schooling for these people because they're uneducated. It's a lot harder to teach people when they're older than to teach them when they're young. So not only do you have to add more types of schooling, not only do you have your normal schooling, you also have maybe language learning, culture learning, etc. So these people are in school for longer. Then they get less high-paying jobs. Maybe they stay on welfare, a lot of them. They get a lot of benefits from the government. And then when they retire, they'll continue to get benefits. In fact, their benefits increase because they get the pension or whatever they get. And it just becomes it ultimately becomes a massive net drag on finances. Same thing in Canada, same thing in America, same thing in, every European country. These people are net drags on public finances. It's a lie. It's a myth that they tell you that all these people, mass migration doesn't help you. It doesn't help. It's not for you. It's not good for our country. We should be promoting Canadian values, Canadian Christian values. Canada won Christianity. That's what you should be providing, so that people get together, they have families, they have kids. They feel good about the future. They can afford a house. Because when you can afford a house, it's a lot easier to start a family than if you're living in a 2-bedroom apartment. And housing prices have gone up because of the mass migration that we're seeing. Next thing I want to talk about is a few more stories about that's gone over the past few weeks. Big story in Australia where some Muslim guy attacks a Christian priest in the middle of a session. He tries to stab him. Through divine intervention, or I don't know what, the switch knife didn't open and he wasn't able to kill him. So what happened was this. You've got this priest, Mari Emmanuel. He's quite famous online, and he's an Orthodox Christian. And he does these live streams, he does these videos about promoting Christianity, as a priest does. And what happened was that a few weeks before, he criticized Islam a little bit too much for this guy's, for this anti-Christian Muslim's opinion, I guess. And so in the middle of one of these live streams, in the middle of Mass, as he's talking, the father's talking, this guy goes up and just starts trying to stab him. Luckily, again, the knife doesn't go off. He's fine. Mari Manuel's fine. Then, the attacker gets basically rushed by a lot of the Christians around that place within the church, and they, rightfully so, they cut off his fingers. They cut off some of his fingers, which, you know what, fair enough. It's quite based, I gotta say. It's pretty based. Average Christian W. But yeah, they cut off his fingers, and now he's facing terrorism charges, which is, the only reason why he's facing these charges now is because that video from Australia propagated all around the internet. It was all over X. And the Australian government didn't like that. They didn't like that. They tried to censor that video. They tried to ban the video. In fact, they sent a bunch of, they sent a bunch of lawyers attacking Elon Musk, attacking X, because they're saying, listen, we don't want you to be showing this. Weird, huh? How it's only when, a Muslim or a minority causes crime that the media doesn't want to talk about it. But when, white people do a peaceful protest, then you need a crackdown. Then their bank accounts need to get frozen. Their money's gone. So yeah, now he's facing terrorism charges, rightfully so, if you're going to attack a priest. And then these types of crimes have been happening all over the world. There's literally a Christian genocide going on in Africa right now, where the Muslims are just murdering Christians, they're burning down churches, and they're committing a literal genocide. But is the media going to talk about that? Nope. Nope, they just want to talk about Gaza. They want to talk about Israel. So instead of bringing in these refugees from all these places, I'm persecuted because I'm a Muslim in a Muslim country. Why don't we start bringing in, Christians from Muslim countries? I feel like they're more persecuted. You know, how Muslims look at non-Muslims and they go, look, you're an infidel. You can't, I can't associate with you. You must die if you don't change your faith. Christianity is the most loving religion that exists. It's the one that accepts everyone. And the reason why these white nations, these European countries, Canada and America, have been pushed so hard is because of Christianity, because the Christians are so tolerant, they're so nice, that they've been essentially bulldozed by the government, by the immigrants, by other religions. And that's the reason why you're seeing Islam, the rise of Islam, especially like Orthodox Islam, is because of they have a lot more determination and they have a lot more intentional expansion. You want to talk about conquering, talk about Islam, don't talk about Christianity. Christianity was in Africa before it was in Europe, by the way. So to say Christianity by definition is racist, it's systemically racist, it's just wrong. Another story is a story about this guy Benny Johnson. So he's this vlogger. He's all over my X page. And Benny Johnson, he does essentially a mini documentary. He just does a video about In-N-Out Burger. For those Canadians who don't know, In-N-Out Burger is a massively popular burger chain in the southern United States. It's been massively growing. It's never closed down a location. Except for one place. They've only closed one location ever. Despite the sea of massive popularity and this massive growth, and where people from all around the country want them to expand to their city. There's only one place where In-N-Out Burger had to close a location. Which one's that? Oh, Oakland, California. That's odd. So he goes over there to check out why is it that it closed down. Well, as you know, like a lot of these West Coast, states or provinces, it's these massively liberal states, massively liberal province. In fact, so liberal that the liberals aren't good enough in British Columbia. That's where the NDP, basically a socialist party, has the most popularity. California as well. Extreme leftist ideologies run rampant over there. And what happens is that when you have these ideologies, they're weak on crime, and criminals proliferate. They're weak on crime. They let drug use be rampant. They decriminalize drugs, decriminalize homelessness, let people sleep in encampments on the streets in front of your house. And California has been seeing one of the biggest levels of emigration out of any American state. So he goes to Oakland, which is infamous for having some of the highest levels of crime due to these leftist policies. Oh, and he's filming the empty In-N-Out lot that's chained up. Oh, and mid-recording, his car's robbed. His car's broken into, his windows are smashed. Mid-recording, 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, his car gets robbed. So if you want the clearest evidence that massively leftist policies work, look at Oakland. Look at Oakland. Diversity is not our strength. Diversity is not our strength. Be Canada one, be American first, I don't care. Do not be anything else. That's all I ask for. That's all I ask for. Next story too, this one's wild. And this is just to show the extent of how much the media is lying to you and how much the media really doesn't care. There's no checks at the media. They've left this, again, this left-hard ideology run rampant. American gas station, Sheetz, and also a very popular gas station, almost a cult-like location in America. They're being sued for discrimination by the government. Why? Well, they say that they've been discriminating against Black, Hispanics, and Native Americans over when they were hiring people. So they're going, look, you're only hiring white people, which isn't true, by the way. They're not just hiring white people. They're going, look, you're discriminating against all these other people. You need to be checked, which I agree with. If you're discriminating based off race, that is a violation of the charter. Okay? It's a violation. It is illegal. I support that. I'm not too arrogant to say that. To say I'm not in favor of equality. Equality is rampant, though. Everyone has equality. This idea that systemic racism exists is simply wrong. And now, why am I saying it's wrong in this case? Well, what is the basis of discrimination that they're saying? They're saying, how would you discriminate against all these people? Well, because the system that they use for hiring applicants, so when they get a resume, they have a system that automatically screens out applicants with criminal records. So they're going, it's discrimination against Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans because you're saying that you don't want criminals working at your store. That statement on its own is racist. You want to go, I want to be all equal, but then you're saying that Black people, Hispanics, and Natives are causing more crime. What about white people with criminal records? Why don't you talk about that? Oh, well, Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans are more predisposed to crime because of systemic racism. No, it's because they're poor. Poor people with lack of family structure, a lack of religion, overall will commit more crime. That's just a fact. I'm not saying it's a good thing that these people have to commit crime, but I'm saying take a little bit of responsibility. And it's this hypocritical notion that, look, you just say these things. No, it's not racist when I say that Blacks, Hispanics, and Natives have a higher criminal records, and that by saying that you can't hire criminals, that's actually racist. Where's the logic in these people? If you look at any of these woke-tard ideologues, they don't make any sense. If you do little pins, they have holes all over their arguments. Nothing that they say makes sense. And yet we keep following it until things get so bad that we finally decide to vote a different way. And then what's going to happen is that, the economy will get better, people get more complacent, they'll be happy with their standard of living, and then they'll start complaining, they'll make up these issues in their mind, they'll start going, yeah, maybe there is systemic racism, let me vote back in some liberal politicians, and our country should again bring back the conservatives to fix everything. That's just the reality of what happens. This story that's completely outrageous. I'm sorry, we don't hire criminals. You racist piece of shit! Like, okay, buddy? Like, okay? Please, maybe don't cause crime. Maybe don't rob someone. Speaking of crime, and I just want to show the duality of this. You want to talk about crime and who's causing it? Last week, there was a robbery in LCBO in Ontario. And LCBO, for those who don't know, is a liquor store in Ontario. It's the provincial liquor store. It's where you can get all the hard alcohol. And here's the news story. Last week, another international student, apparently in Canada, bolstering his criminal CV, boosted some booze from an LCBO in Bowmanville and threatened an off-duty cop with a knife. He then fled and trying to escape the police, drove the wrong way down a highway, crashed and killed a bunch of people. He killed the death of grandparents, a 3-month-old, and himself and the other people. So this guy, who's on a student visa from India, goes to an LCBL, threatens them with a knife, robs the LCBL, then when he sees that the cops are chasing him, decides to go down the wrong way of a highway, a 3-lane highway, I believe, crashes and kills like 5 people. Huh. He's here to, on a student visa. Oh, he's 21. Huh. You want to make it even worse? And this is why Justin Trudeau needs to go. Weak on crime policies just help criminals, doesn't help anyone else. This idea that you have to be weaker on crime so that you can help all these people is fake. It's fake. It's made up. They just make these things up. They gaslight you into thinking it's true. The driver who robbed the LCBO, this guy, Gangjandeep Singh, who's 21, was out on bail on 2 prior liquor store heists. Weeks before he had been released on a $2,000 bail. He was supposed to be back in court on May 14th. He died in the crash when he drove into another car. The international student was also before the courts for carjacking and drug possession. So this guy, this student from India, who's on a student visa, commits several crimes, 5 separate crimes, including another 2 liquor store robberies, and was let off of $2,000 bail and just let to roam free. And then he commits more crime. Explain that one to me, leftists. Explain that one, Justin. Explain it to me. Explain how that makes sense. You think someone who robs a store, okay, sure, we can let you out on bail. Oh, you robbed a store again. Okay, maybe we should let him out on bail again. Oh, he robbed another one. And then he killed people. This is what weak on crime policies create. If you are on a student visa or any temporary visa and you commit crime, you should be deported immediately. That should be the rule. I don't care. If you come here, you are going to abide by our laws, our rules, and you're going to integrate. If you do not want to do those things, we got to kick you out. You got to go. You're not Canada 1. You are not for Canadian values. You are not for my values. You need to leave. Go commit crime in India instead. And what they're saying is, look, there's a reason why there's so much more crime in Canada right now. Why you have all these organized retail thefts. Why you have all these organized crime syndicates. All these gangs proliferating now amongst Canada. Why? It's not because the native population is, not because the white people are now so prone to crime. No, it's because you have weak on crime policies that Justin Trudeau introduced. He reversed a bunch of things that Stephen Harper had introduced, a bunch of policies that were tougher on crime in the disguise that we have to be, more sympathetic to criminals. I say bring back the death penalty and bring back immediate deportation for anyone who commits crime. If you're here for less than, even if you are a real immigrant that does it legally, let's say an economic or family or refugee or whatever you might be, and you commit crime, you should be deported. That's it. If you're here for less than 3 years and you commit crime, you should be out. That's done. Should be out and should never be able to come back. Because here's the thing with criminals. It's a few criminals who commit a vast majority of the crime. You have these serial repeat offenders who go into prison, get out on weak policies, and then commit more crimes. They get out, they commit crimes, they get out, they commit crimes, they get out, and then somebody dies. Somebody always dies with these people. Oh, but they're just victims of oppression. No, we're victims of oppression. The taxpayers are victims of oppression because we have to keep these people here. We have to house them. These are wanted This is from the Indian Foreign Affairs Minister. The fact is, a number of gangland people, a number of people with organized crime links from Punjab, have been made welcome in Canada, he said. There are wanted criminals from India. You have given them visas, and yet you allow them to live here, and we are paying the price. That's what I wanted to, So you have these people who are just being let off on these crimes, okay? And then I want to show you what happens when you have an alternative view, when you have a right-wing predisposition, when you're not with these leftist people and you're a white citizen who has never committed a crime, who provides the most net benefit in terms of cultural to the society, in terms of economic boost to the society. In Germany right now, you have this AfD politician, which is the right-wing party, who just got convicted and who got fined 6,000 euros. What did she do? What did she do? The 27-year-old was also found guilty in the appeal hearing on Monday of inciting hatred against Afghan local workers. So she's she's doing hate crimes against Afghans, right? What hate crime was she committing? What she did was she asked, why is it that this group of people are committing so much crime, especially rape? Why is this particular ethnic group committing such a disproportionate amount of gang rapes, amount of crimes? For this, the politician has now 100 days to pay a fine for a total of 6,000 euros. In Germany, you are considered to have a criminal record if you are sentenced to pay more than a 90-day fine. So she's now an official criminal, okay? And then Elon Musk comes to her defense on X, as he should, by the way. So what she said is that, look at the statistics. I'm just asking about the statistics. And she goes, why is it that they're 9 times more likely to commit a rape or sexual assault than the average German? Isn't that odd? But you're hating on the Afghanistan people. You're hating on the immigrants. The reason for Kaiser's post from 2021 was statements made by Hamburg's first mayor, Peter, I'm not going to say his last name, who announced that he would take 200 Afghan local workers in Hamburg. The AfD politician justified her concern about uncontrolled immigration with statistics and warned of rapes by culturally alien masses. Before the district court hearing, Kaiser said, the mere mention of numbers, data, and facts is to be declared a criminal offense simply because the establishment refuses to accept reality. I won't let myself be silenced. She's Germany 1. I'm Canada 1. These people who come here, they commit crimes. She literally proved. She said, look at the statistics. Why is it that 13% of the population commits 50% of the crimes in America? That's racist to say. No, they're facts. These are numbers. These are statistics. Uneducated, unvetted immigrants from Middle Eastern, African, and South Asian countries commit more crimes than the average Canadian does, than the average European does, than the average American. Unvetted, uncontrolled, illegal, and legal mass migration is not a benefit to anybody. Diversity is not our strength. All our countries have been built off of homogeneous nations that have been white, that have been Christian, and that have essentially pushed away all other types of immigration. Now, since we've let in all these people, since we've begun to introduce this idea that multiculturalism is what's best for society, is when we've begun to see the decline of our nations. It's why housing prices are so high. It's why food prices are so high. It's why everything is so high is why our taxes keep going up. It's why crime keeps going up. It's why the white people of these countries are being oppressed. There's this idea we have to make it equal for everybody. Yeah, make everybody on the same playing field. Don't favor other groups and bring down others. Affirmative action does not work. It just goes to harm Asian students. It goes to harm white students. And then it pushes up Black and Hispanic students, while overall hurting not only the credibility of the institutions, the universities and the colleges that do these policies, but also when recruiting, especially in the law field, the medical sector especially. When you have less competent doctors who are going to universities, these students who are less competent, who got lower scores, who didn't study as hard, who didn't work as hard, these people are becoming doctors rather than more skilled, more talented people who put in more work. There are going to be more deaths, there are going to be more medical malpractice, and it's going to be a net negative for society. Stop trying to replace us. Stop trying to replace the Canadian culture. Canadian culture is real. And if you're going to come here, you better be Canada One. You better integrate. You better assimilate. You better learn the culture. Learn everything. You better become Canadian. And you better not commit crime. Because the issue, Justin Trudeau, you can't be weak on crime with these people. And then even look at America or even Europe, you deport some of them, guess what? They'll just come right back. Does that sound fair to you? Why are you paying all the taxes when these migrants come in and they're just sitting on their ass, having 18 kids, and they're just getting welfare checks? Did you know that for a full year, any immigrant that comes to Canada, legally or illegally, gets Parks Canada passes for free for a whole year? You have to pay $150 as a Canadian citizen to go to Parks Canada. But these immigrants get to go for it for free? They don't care about you. The government hates you. The media hates you. You have to begin speaking up. Be Canada One. Fight for what you believe in. Fight for your country. We need a movement going. Why is there no Turning Point USA, even though they have some? I'm quite critical of those people. Why is there no Turning Point? America First. Why is that not in Canada? Because we don't believe, we've been told that our nation isn't real. They're trying to destroy you. They're trying to take away your identity, take away your culture, your history, your religion. They're trying to destroy you. They're trying to make you weak so that when they replace all the white people and then the birth rate still collapses, they can still blame it on the white people for some reason, and they'll go, it's still systemic racism. Even though you're in a sea flooded by Indians, by Chinese, by Middle Eastern Arabs, by Africans. You won't have a say. You say anything, you're a racist. You should kill yourself. They want you dead. We need to start a movement in Canada. Where's the conservative movement in Canada? Pierre Poilievre will not save us. He's not radical enough. We need more radical conservatives. Anyways, that's what I have for today. I just wanted to really go over a few things from last episode, and I've got a lot more stuff planned. We'll be talking about the Palestinian protesters next episode. We'll be talking about more of the conservative movement and, protecting Canada as a whole. So, in conclusion, be Canada One. We are going to stay Canada One. We're going to start a movement. We're going to start fighting. But maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe I'm always wrong. That's what the media wants you to think. They want you to think, I'm always wrong. All the white people are evil. All the white people are wrong. Anyways, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.